Nuclear waste disposal at sea, in addition to weapons testing, the mid-20th century also saw the deliberate disposal of radioactive waste in marine environments. Beginning in the late 1940s, several nations disposed of low and intermediate-level radioactive waste in designated regions of the deep ocean. Containers filled with contaminated equipment, reactor byproducts, and other radioactive materials were sealed in barrels and dropped into deep-water dumping zones. Records compiled by international agencies later indicated that more than 200,000 containers of radioactive waste were disposed of in the Atlantic Ocean alone between 1946 and 1993. At the time, such practices were widely considered acceptable. The prevailing assumption was that the enormous volume of the ocean would dilute contaminants to harmless levels. However, as oceanographic science advanced, researchers began to understand that dilution does not necessarily eliminate environmental risk. Contaminants can accumulate in sediments, enter food webs, and remain detectable long after their initial release. By the late 20th century, growing environmental concern led to international agreements restricting ocean dumping of hazardous materials. The London Convention of 1972 and later amendments significantly limited the disposal of radioactive and industrial waste at sea. Nevertheless, the legacy of earlier disposal remains part of the ocean's environmental history. A system under pressure, it is important to view these events in their historical context. The mid-20th century was a period of intense technological development and geopolitical tension. Nuclear testing and waste disposal occurred under the assumptions and priorities of that era. Environmental science was still developing, and the ecological complexity of marine systems was not yet fully understood. Yet, when these events are viewed alongside the timeline of ocean exploration, the sequence becomes notable. Within only a few decades, humans reached the deepest point in the ocean for the first time. Human nuclear detonations occurred in marine environments. Typic radioactive waste was deliberately deposited in deep ocean waters. Industrial production expanded rapidly across the globe. All of these developments took place during a period when scientific understanding of marine ecosystems was still relatively limited. The ocean was treated simultaneously as a frontier, a resource, and a repository for industrial byproducts. Only later did researchers begin to appreciate the extraordinary complexity of the system involved. The ocean as a planetary regulator. Modern oceanography now recognizes that the ocean plays a central role in regulating Earth's climate and biosphere. Ocean circulation redistributes heat across the planet through large-scale current systems such as the thermohaline circulation, which moves water masses across ocean basins and connects polar regions to the tropics. Marine ecosystems also influence atmospheric chemistry through biological processes including phytoplankton photosynthesis and carbon sequestration in deep waters. Meanwhile, hydrothermal vent systems discovered in the late 20th century revealed ecosystems powered not by sunlight but by chemical reactions occurring within Earth's crust. These discoveries gradually transformed scientific understanding of the ocean. What had once been viewed as a passive reservoir of water is now understood as a dynamic planetary regulator. Yet many of these insights emerged after decades of industrial and military activity had already altered marine environments. A new question: each of the events described above has a conventional historical explanation. Nuclear testing was driven by geopolitical competition. Waste disposal reflected limited environmental knowledge at the time. Industrial expansion followed economic incentives. But when these events are placed side by side, they raise a broader question: how well did humanity understand the ocean during the period when it was altering that system most dramatically? In retrospect, the answer appears to be not very well. And that realization becomes even more striking when we examine what scientists began to discover about the deep ocean in the decades that followed. Did you enjoy this essay? Let me know below. Like and follow for more.